Hello, I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. Now, At the Mountains of Madness is a novella by H.P. Lovecraft, which was first published in serialized form in a magazine called Astounding Stories in 1936. Now, I have At the Mountains of Madness in this collection. This is H.P. Lovecraft, the complete fiction. This apparently has everything that H.P. Lovecraft ever wrote all in one book. This contains, all of his short stories and all of his novellas and all of his prose poems, and this even has stories that Lovecraft wrote with other authors, and this also has an essay that Lovecraft wrote which shows up at the end of the book. So this apparently contains everything that Lovecraft ever wrote all in one book. Now, the novella I'll be reviewing is At the Mountains of Madness. Now, apparently At the Mountains of Madness is considered by a lot of people to be H.P. Lovecraft's best story, and or at least one of his best stories. And after reading it, I can definitely understand why it's considered to be one of his best, because this was actually a pretty cool story. Now, At the Mountains of Madness is told from the point of view of a professor who, what happens is this professor and a college student, they were on an expedition to Antarctica, and what happens is they've now come back and they're the only survivors of this expedition. And what happens is this college student has gone insane, and basically the whole story is this professor telling the reader what happened to him and this student down in Antarctica. And you find out that when they were down in Antarctica, the people they were with, they discovered these fossils. They discovered these fossilized creatures which were apparently millions and millions of years old. They existed since probably since before the time of the dinosaurs, and they're these ancient things that they found. And what happens is these fossils, now all of H.P. Lovecraft's books, not all, I don't know if it's all of his works, but a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's stories are kind of set in the same universe. And in the H.P. Lovecraft universe, there is this book called the Necronomicon, which is this ancient book which is used for calling these evil gods like Cthulhu and Yog-Sothoth. And what happens is in the Necronomicon there's these legends about these creatures called the Old Ones who apparently predate man. And what happens is this professor notices how these fossils that they found are eerily similar to the way the Old Ones are described in the legends of the Necronomicon. So what happens is eventually this professor and the student eventually find a city in Antarctica, this lost city which was apparently built by the Old Ones. What happens is they realize that these creatures were intelligent enough to create an entire city. And what happens is when the professor and the student are in the city, they discover the entire history of the Old Ones, and they discover that the Old Ones were not originally from Earth. They came here from possibly another planet or even another dimension. And what happens is it's implied that the Old Ones may have actually been the ones who created life on this planet. And it's a very interesting story. They discover, they go through the whole history of the Old Ones, and apparently the Old Ones created these creatures, which I believe they created them to originally work for them, but eventually the creatures, like, turned against them and ended up, like, wiping out all the old ones. It's a very interesting story, but I don't want to give away anything else besides what I just said, but yeah, At the Mountains of Madness is definitely a really cool novella. I can definitely understand why it's considered to be one of Lovecraft's best stories. Now, At the Mountains of Madness is also tied into the Cthulhu mythos because they mention the Necronomicon and they mention the Old Ones, and who are these creatures. Well, I just explained what they are, but yeah, what was I going to say now? Apparently, one of my favorite directors, Guillermo del Toro, apparently for a while now, he's actually been wanting to make a movie based on this story, and if he does that, I'm pretty sure that will be great, because he's a great director. Guillermo del Toro, he directed movies like Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy and Blade 2. You know, he's a really good director, and I think if anybody can do an adaptation of this story, it would probably be him. But yeah, At the Mountains of Madness was a pretty cool story. I definitely recommend it, and bye.